The grand ballroom shimmered under the soft glow of the crystal chandeliers. Guests were elegantly dressed, sipping champagne, and engaged in quiet conversation. A hush fell over the room as a young black girl, no older than 8, stood nervously in the center of the dance floor. Her dress, a simple white creation, hung a little too loosely on her small frame, and her shoes were scuffed from wear. She looked up, her eyes meeting those of the man across the room, a billionaire known for his wealth and sharp wit. He stood tall, a smirk on his face as he looked down at her. "If you can dance this waltz, I'll adopt you," he said, his voice laced with mocking amusement. The words hung in the air, and a ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. The girl stood still for a moment, her small hands clenched at her sides, fighting the tremble in her body. The room seemed to hold its breath, all eyes on her, waiting for her to react. The millionaire took a slow sip from his glass, enjoying the attention, while his guests whispered amongst themselves, their eyes flicking between the girl and him. The challenge was simple, a dance. But for her, it was a test of more than just steps. It was a challenge to her dignity, her strength, and perhaps, her future. The girl took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling quickly. She knew what she had to do. She had no other choice but to step forward, despite the fear gnawing at her. With a glance at the floor, she took the first step, her shoes clicking softly against the marble. The music began, a slow, elegant waltz that filled the air, the sound of the strings lifting the tension in the room. The girl hesitated for a brief moment, then began to move, her small feet unsure at first, but slowly finding their rhythm. Each step she took was deliberate, each movement more confident than the last. The crowd watched in stunned silence as she danced, her eyes locked on the floor, trying to block out the eyes of the world. As the music swelled, so did her confidence. The man, still standing with a bemused expression, took a step forward, his gaze narrowing. For a brief moment, he seemed uncertain, as if the sight before him was not what he expected. He had anticipated clumsy steps, a stammering, awkward attempt, but instead, he saw a girl who moved with a quiet grace, a girl who refused to be broken. The crowd began to murmur. The laughter faded. What had started as a joke now felt different. The girl's movements were no longer just steps, they were a statement. She was not here to be mocked. She was here to prove herself, to show the world, and the man standing before her, that she was worthy of something more than ridicule. As she spun gracefully across the floor, her confidence growing with each turn, the billionaire's smile faltered. It was replaced with something else, an expression of uncertainty, of realization. The room, once filled with the sound of laughter and whispers, fell silent. All that could be heard was the soft rustling of the music, the steady beat of her heart, and the sound of her feet gliding over the polished marble. The girl continued to dance, her small face set in determination, and for the first time, the man's eyes softened. He saw her not as a joke, not as a challenge, but as a person. He saw her strength, her courage, and her spirit. And in that moment, something changed. The crowd, still silent, watched as the girl finished her dance, breathless but unbowed. The man stood still, his eyes never leaving her, the smug smile gone from his lips. The game was no longer about winning or losing. It was about respect. And in the quiet that followed, the truth was undeniable. The girl had won. The ballroom was still, the air heavy with an unspoken tension. The young black girl, still standing in the center of the dance floor, took slow, deliberate breaths as she looked up at the billionaire. Her small chest heaved with the effort of her movements, her feet still tapping the rhythm of the waltz in her head. The man stood at the edge of the room, his gaze lingering on her, his expression no longer mocking but uncertain. The crowd, which had once been filled with whispers and laughter, was now silent. All eyes were on the girl and the man, waiting for one of them to speak. The man cleared his throat, his voice quiet, almost hesitant. You actually did it," he said, more to himself than to her. The girl said nothing, but her eyes flicked up to meet his. There was no triumph in her gaze, only calm determination. She had done what he thought was impossible, and now she would wait for him to accept it. The billionaire stepped forward, his shoes clicking on the polished floor, his eyes still fixed on her. "I thought you would fail," he muttered, more as an admission than an accusation. I thought you were just another girl looking for attention." The girl didn't flinch. She had heard the whispers, the doubts, the mocking words before, but she had chosen to prove him wrong. "I wasn't looking for attention," she said softly, her voice steady despite the exhaustion that pulled at her small frame. "I just wanted to dance, and I wanted you to see me." Her words hung in the air, more powerful than any step she had taken on that floor. The man stopped in front of her, his eyes searching hers as though trying to make sense of the change that had come over him. For the first time, he saw her not as a challenge or a joke, but as a person. The girl, despite everything, had remained poised, had stayed true to herself even when the world around her had expected her to fall apart. The crowd, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, remained still. No one dared to speak. The billionaire shifted his weight, his mouth opening as though to say something more, but the words didn't come. He was no longer sure of himself. The smug confidence he had walked into the ballroom with was gone, replaced by something else, something deeper, more vulnerable. "I didn't expect you to be like this," he finally admitted. His voice, though steady, carried the weight of an unspoken truth. "I thought you were just like the others, just another child to be ignored." The girl blinked up at him, her expression softening, but there was no trace of bitterness in her eyes. "You thought wrong," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "I'm not like them. I never was." For a long moment, they stood there, the music in the background a soft hum against the heavy silence that filled the room. The billionaire, still processing the girl's words, looked down at her with a mixture of awe and regret. The girl, for her part, had already made peace with herself. She had done her part. Now it was up to him to make a choice. The guests, still unsure of what to make of the unfolding drama, began to stir. Some exchanged glances, others shifted in their seats, but no one dared to speak. It was as though they were all waiting for the next step, for the resolution that would tie this unexpected encounter together. The billionaire's face softened, the hard edges of his expression melting away. He crouched down to the girl's level, his eyes locking with hers. For the first time, he truly saw her not as a challenge, not as a game, but as a human being. And in that moment, everything changed. "You've got courage," he said, his voice quieter now, filled with something that resembled respect. The girl's lips twitched into a small smile. She nodded once, slowly. "I don't need courage to prove myself," she replied. "I just need to be seen." He stood up, a small frown crossing his face as he looked back at the guests, who had gathered around the edges of the room. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been wrong about a lot of things." The words felt strange on his tongue, but they were the truth. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't mind admitting it. The girl had shown him something he had long forgotten. The power of quiet strength, the courage to stand tall even when the world expected you to fall. The room, still silent, seemed to hold its breath as the billionaire looked at the girl one last time. A small part of him, the part that had mocked and belittled her, was beginning to fade. The man who had once looked down on her now saw her as an equal, someone worthy of respect. And in that moment, the shift was complete. The billionaire stood there, his mind swirling with a mix of emotions. The girl had danced, and in doing so, she had shattered all his preconceived notions about who she was. His initial mockery had faded into the background, replaced by a strange sense of admiration. But there was still more to uncover, more to understand. Without a word, he turned and led her out of the ballroom, his steps quick but measured, as if he were chasing something he could not fully grasp. The girl followed silently, her small feet echoing softly behind him. They passed through the grand hall, through the doors, and into a quieter part of the mansion. Once inside the study, the door clicked shut behind them, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. "Sit down," he said, his voice softer now. She did as he instructed, perching herself on the edge of one of the luxurious leather chairs, her small hands folded in her lap. The billionaire walked over to the large desk and sat down, his eyes never leaving her. There was a long silence. The only sound in the room was the soft hum of the air conditioning. He studied her for a moment, as if trying to figure out what it was about her that had shifted something deep within him. He had been wrong about her. He had been wrong about so many things. Finally, he spoke. "I never thought you would be like this," he admitted, his tone more reflective than accusatory. I thought you were just another child, another one to be discarded, to be ignored. The girl didn't respond at first. She simply sat there, her gaze steady, watching him as he spoke. She had heard these words before, from others who had underestimated her. But this time, it felt different. This time, it felt like he was truly seeing her. I know what it's like to be overlooked, she said softly, her voice calm and measured. I know what it's like to be invisible, to be treated as if you don't matter, but I also know what it's like to fight through that, to make people see you. The billionaire leaned forward, his hands resting on the desk, his eyes locked onto hers. You're not like the others, he said, almost to himself. You're something else, something more. The girl smiled, a small, quiet smile. I told you, she said, her voice firm but kind. I'm not like them. For a moment, the billionaire sat there in silence, digesting her words. It wasn't just her ability to dance, to stand tall in the face of ridicule. It was something deeper. It was her spirit, her resilience. It was the way she had refused to let him or anyone define who she was. He cleared his throat, as if shaking off his thoughts. You proved me wrong, he said, his voice thick with a mix of awe and regret. You proved me wrong in a way I didn't even know I needed. The girl nodded, her gaze softening. I didn't need to prove anything to you, she said quietly. I did it for myself. I did it to remind myself that I am worth something. The billionaire looked at her, his mind racing. There was a long pause before he spoke again, his voice hesitant but sincere. I want to make it right, he said. I want to help you, to give you a chance to live a life you deserve. The girl's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise passing over her face. She had never expected this, never imagined that someone like him, someone so far removed from her world, would offer her anything other than pity or disdain. But here he was, offering her something more, offering her a chance. I don't know what that means, she said, her voice still steady but filled with curiosity, but I'm willing to find out. The billionaire nodded, his expression serious. I'll help you, in any way I can, he said. You deserve more than what life has given you so far. The girl hesitated, then spoke again, her voice softer this time. What do you want from me in return? She asked, her tone not accusing, just curious. The billionaire took a deep breath, leaning back in his chair. I don't want anything, he said quietly. I just want to make up for all the times I've been wrong. I want to give you what you deserve. She studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly, a small, thoughtful smile crossing her face. Then we have an agreement, she said. But you have to promise me something. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What's that? Promise me you'll see me for who I am, she said. Not who you want me to be, not some charity case, but me. The billionaire stared at her for a long moment, then finally nodded. I promise, he said, his voice firm and sincere. I promise I will see you for who you are. The girl smiled, the faintest glimmer of relief in her eyes. Good, she said, her voice light but full of conviction. Then we're good. And for the first time, the billionaire truly believed it. The billionaire sat in the quiet study, his fingers tapping gently on the desk in front of him, the soft glow of the desk lamp casting long shadows across the room. The girl sat across from him, her posture straight, her eyes calm yet intense, as if she were watching him, waiting for him to understand. There was a long silence between them, thick with unspoken words, a moment of hesitation hanging in the air. He had promised to see her for who she truly was, but now, he found himself struggling with the weight of his own promise. The shift in his perspective had been sudden, unexpected, and it made him feel unsure of himself for the first time in years. He had always been in control, always the one who decided, who dictated the terms. But this was different. She was different. He looked at her, the young girl who had danced so gracefully, who had turned his world upside down with nothing but her courage. She was no longer the child he had seen as a mere challenge, someone to be tested and put in her place. No, she was someone who had shaken him to his core, someone who made him question everything he had believed about people, about power, and about himself. I need you to explain something to me, he said finally, his voice soft but steady. She raised an eyebrow, the faintest hint of a smile on her lips. What do you need explained? She asked, her tone light, but with an underlying seriousness. He leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped in front of him, as though trying to find the right words. I've spent my life building empires, making deals, controlling everything around me, he began, his voice distant, as if he were talking to himself as much as to her. I've never had to question my own decisions, my own authority. But with you, with what you did tonight, I don't know anymore. The girl stayed silent, watching him with steady eyes, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She was waiting, giving him space to work through his thoughts. I've seen so many people like you, kids from tough neighborhoods, kids who have nothing, but none of them ever did what you did. None of them ever stood up to me like that, not without fear, not with that kind of strength, he continued, his voice thickening with emotion. What do you want from me? The girl's expression softened, but her eyes remained sharp, as if she had already seen through him, understood the root of his confusion. I don't want anything from you, she replied calmly. I just want to be seen, to be recognized for who I am, not for what you think I am. Her words hit him harder than he expected. He had spent so much time trying to control, to shape the world around him, that he had never truly understood the power of seeing someone for who they truly were. The realization settled into him slowly, like a weight he had been carrying without knowing. And now, he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She tilted her head slightly, her expression contemplative. Now, we figure out how to make this right, she said, her voice steady, but with a sense of finality that made him realize there was no turning back. He had promised to see her for who she was, but now, he had to follow through. He couldn't just offer her empty words. He had to make it count. The silence between them stretched again, but it was different now. It wasn't uncomfortable, it was filled with an understanding, a recognition of the shift that had occurred. The billionaire stood up slowly, his mind working through the next steps. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing for certain. He would have to change. He would have to prove that his words meant something. I want to help you, he said, his voice firm, no longer filled with uncertainty. I don't know how yet, but I will. The girl looked up at him, her eyes softening. That's all I want, she said simply, to know you'll try. He nodded, feeling the weight of his promise settle into his chest. He didn't know where this path would lead, but for the first time in his life, he was ready to follow it. The billionaire turned away from the desk, his eyes falling on the view of the city through the large windows. The lights of the skyline flickered in the distance, each one a reminder of the empire he had built. But for the first time, he wasn't thinking about his empire. He was thinking about the girl in front of him, about what she had taught him without saying a word. She had shown him that real power wasn't in control, it was in understanding, in seeing people for who they really were. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something shift inside of him. The girl stood up, walking over to him, her small figure silhouetted against the light from the windows. She stopped a few feet away, looking up at him with quiet determination. Thank you, she said, her voice calm and sincere. He turned to face her, his expression softer than before. No, he replied quietly. Thank you, for showing me the way. And in that moment, they both understood. This was just the beginning. The next few days passed by in a blur of meetings, decisions, and new beginnings. The billionaire had kept his word, not only offering to help the young girl, but also making plans to ensure her future would be different. He had reached out to his connections, organized a place for her at a prestigious school, and arranged for her to meet with a mentor who could guide her in the years to come. But as the days moved on, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to be done. He needed to make a real change, not just in her life, but in his own as well. One morning, as he sat in his office overlooking the city, his assistant knocked gently on the door before stepping inside. Sir, she said, her voice respectful but cautious, there's someone here to see you. The billionaire looked up, surprised. He didn't have any scheduled appointments. Who is it? He asked. It's the girl, she replied, her eyes flicking nervously to the door. He raised an eyebrow, a hint of confusion passing across his face. The girl? He repeated. She nodded. The one from the other night. His heart skipped a beat as the realization hit him. The girl had come to see him. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he had a feeling it wasn't just a visit to say thank you. Send her in, he said, his voice calm but filled with anticipation. A moment later, the door opened, and the young girl stepped inside. She looked as confident as ever, her eyes sharp and determined. Yet there was something new in her demeanor, a quiet sense of purpose. She was no longer the nervous child who had danced for him in the ballroom. She was someone who had found her place, someone who knew exactly what she wanted. The billionaire stood up as she walked in, his eyes studying her closely. "I didn't expect to see you today," he said, a slight smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "What brings you here?" The girl didn't hesitate. She walked toward him, her steps deliberate, and stopped a few feet away. "I came to thank you," she said, her voice steady but warm, "for everything you've done, but also to ask for something more." The billionaire raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What more could you possibly need?" he asked, genuinely curious. She looked him in the eye, her gaze unwavering. "I don't just need your help with my education," she said, her voice calm but filled with conviction. "I need your help with something bigger, something that could change everything. Together with the help of a remarkable young girl, we are launching a program that will change the way we approach opportunity for the next generation. A program that gives every child, no matter their background, the chance to reach their full potential." He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. "This isn't just about money. This is about mentorship, guidance, and providing the tools needed to succeed." The billionaire stared at her, surprised by the depth of her request. He had thought she would come to him with gratitude, or perhaps a list of material things she wanted. But this was different. She wasn't just asking for herself. She was asking for a chance to make a difference in the lives of others. He felt a surge of admiration for her, a feeling that grew stronger with each word she spoke. "That's a very ambitious idea," he said, his voice thoughtful, "but it's also a very powerful one. You want to give other kids the same chance you've been given, to show them they have a future." The girl nodded, her expression determined. "Yes," she said simply. "That's exactly what I want." The billionaire was silent for a moment, weighing her words. He had the resources, the connections, and the influence to make something like that happen. But it would take a lot of work, a lot of planning. It wouldn't be easy. "And you think you can do this?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine curiosity. "You think you can lead a program like that?" The girl smiled slightly, her eyes filled with confidence. "I know I can," she said, "and I know that with your help, it will happen." The billionaire stared at her, seeing something in her eyes that he had never seen before. It wasn't just confidence, it was a fire. A determination that reminded him of himself when he was younger. Before he had everything he wanted. Before he knew how to control the world around him. In that moment, he knew that he had to help her. Not just because she was asking for help, but because she was offering him something in return, a chance to do something that mattered. "All right," he said, his voice firm. "Let's make it happen." The girl's face lit up, and she stepped forward, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I won't let you down." The billionaire smiled, feeling something inside of him shift. "I know you won't," he said. "Now, let's figure out how to change the world." And for the first time, he realized that by helping her, he was changing his own life too. The following weeks were filled with intense meetings, late nights, and constant planning. The billionaire, now fully committed to the idea, poured his resources into the program the girl had proposed. They met regularly to discuss the framework, the structure, and the vision for the future. The girl, though still young, took charge in ways that surprised everyone. She was articulate, determined, and unafraid to speak her mind, even when it came to the toughest decisions. She knew what she wanted, and her passion was contagious. The program, which would offer mentorship, scholarships, and support for kids in underprivileged communities, was beginning to take shape. The billionaire used his vast network to recruit influential figures, educators, and philanthropists, all of whom shared his belief in the potential of this project. They worked tirelessly, knowing that what they were building would change lives forever. One afternoon, after weeks of work, they were ready to make their first big announcement. "And you think you can do this?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine curiosity. "You think you can lead a program like that?" The girl smiled slightly. Her eyes filled with confidence. "I know I can," she said. "And I know that with your help, it will happen." The billionaire stared at her, seeing something in her eyes that he had never seen before. "Together with the help of a remarkable young girl, we are launching a program that will change the way we approach opportunity for the next generation. A program that gives every child, no matter their background, the chance to reach their full potential." He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. "This isn't just about money. This is about mentorship, guidance, and providing the tools needed to succeed. This is about showing children that they matter, that they are seen, and that they have the power to change their own lives." He gestured toward the girl, who stood quietly beside him, her eyes shining with pride. "But none of this would have been possible without her vision. She came to me with an idea, and together, we made it a reality. I have no doubt that her drive and determination will inspire many others to follow in her footsteps." The girl's face lit up, and she stepped forward, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I won't let you down." The billionaire smiled, feeling something inside of him shift. "I know you won't," he said. "Now, let's figure out how to change the world." And for the first time, he realized that by helping her, he was changing his own life too. The following weeks were filled with intense meetings, late nights, and constant planning. I didn't have anyone who saw me for who I was. But today, I'm here to make sure that other kids don't have to go through the same thing. I want them to know that they are worthy, that they are important, and that they can change their lives. Her voice cracked slightly, but she held her ground. "I know what it feels like to be invisible, but now I know what it feels like to be seen. And that's what we're offering. A chance to be seen, to be heard, and to be given the tools to succeed." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Then, the applause began. It started slowly, hesitant at first, but quickly grew into a thunderous wave of support. The billionaire smiled, feeling a sense of pride swelling in his chest. He had given her the resources, the connections, and the platform to make a difference, but it was her passion, her drive, that had truly made this possible. They had come a long way from that night in the ballroom, when she had stood before him and danced with nothing but determination. Now, they were standing together, creating something that would impact countless lives. As the event continued, the billionaire watched the girl interact with the people in the room, educators, potential donors, and other supporters, her confidence unwavering, her presence magnetic. She had become a force of nature, someone who could move mountains if she chose to. He realized, in that moment, that she had taught him something he hadn't expected. It wasn't just about helping others, it was about giving people the chance to see their own worth. She had opened his eyes to the power of belief, the power of vision, and the power of seeing people for who they truly were. As the day came to a close, the billionaire stood by the window of his office, looking out over the city skyline. He felt a sense of accomplishment, but more importantly, he felt a sense of purpose. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about the next deal or the next big investment. He was thinking about the future, about the children who would now have a chance at a better life, about the girl who had shown him what true strength looked like. And he knew, without a doubt, that this was only the beginning. The days that followed were filled with excitement and uncertainty. The program was off to a strong start, with the first group of children selected for mentorship, scholarships, and life-changing opportunities. But not everything was going as smoothly as they had hoped. Despite the billionaire's influence and the girl's unwavering determination, there were still obstacles to overcome. A few weeks after the program's official launch, the billionaire received a call that would shake the very foundation of what they had built. His assistant, her voice tense, informed him that there were rumors circulating, and they were not good. "We've been hearing whispers," she said. "There's a story going around that the program is just a publicity stunt. People are questioning your intentions. Some even claim that you're using these kids for your own gain." The billionaire felt a cold knot form in his stomach as he listened. He had worked so hard to turn the program into something real, something that would change lives. But now, it was being questioned. His first instinct was to deny it, to put the rumors to rest with a well-crafted statement. But he knew deep down that this wasn't going to be enough. He had to show, not just tell, that he was committed to making this work, no matter the cost. "We need to address this, and we need to address it now," he said, his voice firm. "Arrange a meeting with the team, all of them. I want to know who's behind this and how we can stop it." The girl, who had been working closely with him on the program's development, was there when he made the call. Her face, normally filled with confidence, had fallen as soon as she heard the news. "What if they're right?" she asked quietly, her voice tinged with doubt. The billionaire turned to look at her, his expression softening. "They're not right," he said, his voice reassuring. "We've done everything by the book. We've built this program to give kids like you a chance, and we won't let anyone take that away." He saw the hesitation in her eyes, the same doubt he had seen in the mirror when he had first agreed to take on this project. But he knew they couldn't let it stop them. They couldn't let the rumors define them. Later that day, they gathered in a conference room with the entire team. Each person who had worked on the project, from the educators to the financial backers, to the mentors who had already started working with the kids. The billionaire stood at the front of the room, his posture strong, his face set in determination. "We've hit a bump in the road," he said, addressing the group. "But that's all it is, just a bump. We can either fold and let the rumors take hold, or we can prove them wrong." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of everyone there. "I don't know about you, but I'm not in this for the publicity. I'm in this to make a real difference, and I know all of you are too." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of his words settling in. But then, one by one, the team members began to speak up. The mentor who had been working closely with the kids talked about their progress, how they were already showing signs of growth, of hope that they hadn't had before. "These kids are changing," she said, her voice firm. "They're learning, they're growing, and they're seeing that someone cares about them." Another mentor, who had been skeptical at first, nodded in agreement. "I've seen it too," he said. "I've seen them open up. Trust us. They're not just numbers, they're people, and we're doing something real here." Slowly, the doubts began to fade. The team rallied around the idea that they were on the right path, that what they were doing mattered. The billionaire turned to the girl, who was standing quietly off to the side, watching everything unfold. She met his gaze, her expression strong once again. "We'll show them," she said, her voice filled with determination. "We'll show them what we're capable of." And that was exactly what they did. Over the next few weeks, the team worked tirelessly, strengthening the program and reaching out to more kids who needed help. They organized community events, showcasing the progress the children had made, and they invited the press to see the real impact the program was having. Slowly, but surely, the narrative began to shift. The rumors died down, replaced by stories of success, hope, and change. The community began to see the program not as a publicity stunt, but as a true force for good. The billionaire watched it all unfold, a sense of pride growing inside him. He knew there was still much work to be done, but they had proven that they were in this for the long haul. They had faced doubt, but they had overcome it together. And as he looked at the girl, who had started it all, he knew that the journey was just beginning. As the weeks went by, the program continued to grow, touching the lives of more children than the billionaire and the girl had ever imagined. The first group of kids had already begun to show incredible progress, not just academically but in their confidence, their belief in themselves. Word of the program spread, and soon, more children were being brought in from different neighborhoods, each with their own story of struggle and hope. The team worked tirelessly, ensuring that each child had the support they needed. But with success came new challenges. The billionaire, though proud of the work they had done, could not ignore the pressure mounting on him. He had made a commitment, a promise, but now there were new expectations, new people to answer to. The media, initially skeptical, had begun to praise the program, but with praise came more scrutiny. Critics questioned whether the program could sustain itself, whether it could expand and maintain its high standards. The billionaire knew he had to act quickly. He couldn't afford to let the program falter, not after everything they had worked for. One evening, after a long day of meetings, he sat in his office, staring out over the city. His mind raced with thoughts of what to do next. The girl, now fully involved in the operation of the program, knocked on the door before entering. Her presence was calming, a reminder of how far they had come together. She walked over to the desk, her eyes scanning the room before meeting his. "You look like you've been carrying the weight of the world," she said softly. He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice low. "We've done so much, but we need more. We need to scale. We need to make this last." The girl nodded, understanding immediately. "You're right," she said, "but we've come this far. We're already making a difference, and that's what matters." He looked at her, the realization dawning on him. She was right. They had made a difference, and that was what they had set out to do in the first place. "We're not doing this for the headlines," he said, his voice more assured now. "We're doing this for them." He gestured toward the children, the kids who had once been invisible, who had now found a space where they could belong, where they could grow. The girl smiled, her eyes soft with gratitude. "Exactly," she said. "And the impact we've made so far, that's real. It's not a stunt. It's not for show. It's the beginning of something much bigger." As they spoke, the billionaire realized how much he had changed in the process. When he had first agreed to help, he had done so out of obligation, driven by guilt and a need to prove something. But now, it was different. The work they were doing, the lives they were changing, it had become personal. It had become his mission too. But there was still so much to do. "I want to expand," he said after a long pause, his voice filled with resolve. "I want this to reach even more kids. But we need the right resources. We need to bring in the right people." The girl, always quick to understand, nodded. "We can do that," she said. "We have the foundation. We just need to keep pushing." And so, they did. Over the following weeks, the billionaire and the girl worked side by side, reaching out to new investors, to people who could help fund the program and provide the resources they needed to expand. They went to schools, to community centers, meeting with families and spreading the word about the opportunity for the children who needed it most. Slowly, the program began to expand beyond the initial city. They started to reach kids in other states, offering them the same opportunities for mentorship, support, and education. Every step was a challenge, but every success, no matter how small, made it all worth it. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, moments when they questioned whether they could keep up with the growing demand. But with each new child they helped, they knew they were on the right path. It was more than just about offering education. It was about showing these kids that they had a future, that they could be anything they wanted to be if given the right tools and support. The billionaire found himself attending more and more events speaking about the program, raising awareness, and forging connections that would help it continue to grow. But despite the recognition, he never forgot the reason he had started all of this. He never forgot the girl who had come to him with a vision, the girl who had shown him that the true measure of success was not in wealth, but in the lives you touched. And as the program continued to thrive, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. Not just in the work they had done, but in the person he had become. He had learned so much from her, from the kids, and from the experience of seeing people for who they truly were. He had come a long way from the billionaire who had once viewed success as something that could only be measured in numbers. Now, he understood that real success was measured by the impact you made on the world, by the lives you changed. And he was just getting started. As the program expanded and more lives were touched, the billionaire found himself becoming deeply involved in the day-to-day operations, working closely with the girl who had sparked everything. The children were thriving, their confidence growing, and their futures looking brighter than ever. But despite all the progress they had made, there was still a lingering question that weighed on his mind. Would this be enough? Would they be able to keep up with the growing demand and truly make a lasting impact? One evening, as the sun set behind the skyscrapers outside his office, the billionaire sat in his chair, staring out the window. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. The girl entered, her expression calm but serious. She had been working tirelessly, and it showed. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice gentle but perceptive. The billionaire didn't immediately respond. He knew she could see through him. She always could. "I'm just thinking," he said finally. "Thinking about how much we've accomplished, but wondering if it will be enough in the long run. We've made a real difference in the lives of these kids, but we still need more. We need to reach even more." She nodded, walking over to his desk. "I know what you mean," she said quietly. "But look at what we've already done. We've given them something they never had before. Hope, opportunity, a chance to be something more. That's not nothing. The billionaire turned his chair to face her, his eyes filled with both admiration and uncertainty. But is it enough? He repeated. I know we've made a difference in their lives. But what if it's not enough to change everything? What if we can't reach everyone who needs help? The girl smiled, her eyes filled with a wisdom beyond her years. You're asking the wrong question, she said softly. The question isn't whether it's enough. The question is, are we doing the best we can with what we have? And I think we are. He looked at her, surprised by her answer. But how do you know? He asked. How do you know we're on the right path? She walked over to the window and looked out at the city, her gaze thoughtful. Because we're doing it for the right reasons, she said, her voice firm. We're doing it for them, not for fame, not for recognition, but because we believe in these kids. We believe in their potential. That's what matters. The billionaire leaned back in his chair, reflecting on her words. She was right. The purpose of the program had never been about proving anything to the world. It had been about giving these children the chance to believe in themselves, to see a future that was within their reach. It had been about showing them that they were worth something. He nodded slowly, feeling a shift in his perspective. I guess I've been looking at it all wrong, he admitted. I've been so focused on the big picture, on the future, that I've forgotten what matters most. It's not about reaching everyone right now. It's about making the most of the opportunities we have in front of us. She smiled, and for the first time in a long while, the billionaire felt a sense of peace. Exactly, she said. And you've already done more than most people ever will. You've changed lives. That's something to be proud of. The room was silent for a moment as they both processed the weight of what they had accomplished. The billionaire thought about all the children whose lives had been forever altered because of their efforts. He thought about the girl, the one who had come to him with nothing but a vision, and who had shown him what true strength looked like. He knew that they had only scratched the surface. There was still so much work to be done, but for the first time, he understood that it wasn't about achieving perfection or solving every problem. It was about doing what they could, when they could, and making sure that every child who walked through their doors knew they mattered. You're right, he said finally, his voice steady. We'll keep pushing forward. We'll keep doing what we can, and we'll keep believing in them, because that's all we can do. She nodded, her expression softening. And that's enough, she said. That's more than enough. The billionaire stood up, walking over to the window to join her. Together, they looked out at the city, the skyline lit up by the fading light of the evening. They had built something real, something meaningful. And for the first time, the billionaire felt like they were on the right path, not because they had all the answers, but because they were doing it for the right reasons. They weren't just building a program, they were building a future where every child had the chance to shine. The program had grown exponentially, and with it, both the hopes and challenges that came with success. The billionaire and the girl, who had now become a team in every sense of the word, found themselves standing at the crossroads of something monumental. They had successfully expanded the initiative, touching the lives of hundreds of children, and yet, there were moments when doubts crept in. On a rainy afternoon, the billionaire sat alone in his office, watching the rain tap against the window, deep in thought. His mind kept replaying the conversations he had been having with partners, potential investors, and the team. They were at a tipping point. Everything they had built was now at risk. The program's success had drawn attention, and not all of it was good. There were whispers, doubts about its sustainability, its long-term impact. Could they truly maintain the momentum? Could they continue to expand without compromising the quality of the work they had done so far? He had built empires before, but this was different. This was personal. This wasn't just about profits or growth. This was about children's futures. And that, more than anything, weighed on him. The girl, as always, seemed to sense when he was struggling. She knocked on the door, her face bright but tinged with concern. "How's it going?" she asked, stepping inside. He gestured for her to sit, his face tired, his hands rubbing his temples. "We've come so far," he said, his voice a little rough. "But now it feels like we're standing on the edge of something we can't control anymore. People are questioning whether this can really work long term. There are risks we didn't anticipate." She sat down across from him, watching him carefully. "What are they saying?" she asked. He sighed, looking out the window. "They're worried about scalability, about whether we can keep offering the same quality as we grow. There's talk of corporate influence, whether we're really serving the kids or just turning this into another business. The last thing I want is for this to become a brand or a trend. It's supposed to be about them." The girl was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned forward, her voice steady. "We knew this would happen. We always knew that when you do something big, people will doubt it. But look at what we've done. Look at the kids. Look at the way they're thriving. That's the proof. That's the reason we keep going." He turned back to her, meeting her eyes. "I know. I just don't want to let them down. You're right. We've made a difference. But how do we keep this going? How do we make sure it doesn't lose its purpose as we grow?" She smiled gently, her confidence as unwavering as ever. "We keep the focus on them. We keep it about the kids, the community, the impact we're making. If we lose sight of that, then yes, it becomes just another program. But as long as we remember why we're doing this, it won't matter how big it gets." He took a deep breath, letting her words sink in. He had been so caught up in the logistics, the pressure to expand, that he had forgotten what had driven them in the first place, the belief that every child deserved a chance. "You're right," he said, nodding slowly. "We just need to remember why we started. This isn't about growth for the sake of growth. It's about reaching as many kids as we can and giving them the same opportunities we've given the first group." The girl's smile widened, a look of pride in her eyes. "Exactly," she said. "And we have the power to make that happen. We just need to keep moving forward, keep believing in the mission. As long as we do that, we'll be fine." As he listened to her, the weight on his shoulders lightened. For the first time in days, he felt a sense of clarity. He had been focusing too much on the noise, on the fears and doubts. But the truth was simple. They were making a difference, and that was enough. "Thank you," he said, his voice softer now. "You always seem to know exactly what to say." She chuckled, standing up. "You're welcome," she said. "Now let's go show the world what we're capable of." He stood up with her, a renewed sense of purpose filling him. Together, they had built something that was bigger than both of them, something that had the potential to change the world. And now, more than ever, he knew that the only way to move forward was to keep their eyes on the children, on the lives they were changing, one step at a time. As they walked out of the office together, the billionaire felt a sense of calm settle over him. The road ahead would not be easy, but with the girl by his side and the team they had built, he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. They had already proven that they could overcome anything, and with that kind of determination, there was nothing they couldn't accomplish. Months passed, and the program continued to thrive, but so did the pressure. The challenges of scaling, of ensuring the quality of the program remained high as it grew, began to take their toll. The billionaire and the girl worked tirelessly, side by side, constantly adjusting, learning, and evolving the program to meet the demands of its expanding reach. They had succeeded in bringing hope and opportunity to countless children, but the journey was far from over. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings and discussions with investors, the billionaire sat in his office, staring at the latest financial projections. The numbers were promising, but there was a nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach. Could they really keep this up? Was the impact sustainable, or were they simply building a house of cards? As he ran his fingers through his hair, he heard a soft knock on the door. It was the girl, her eyes focused, but her expression calm. She stepped inside and walked over to where he sat, her presence instantly reassuring. "You look exhausted," she said gently. "I'm fine," he replied, though his voice betrayed his weariness. I'm wondering if we can keep this going. The numbers are good, the kids are thriving. But what happens when we reach the limits of what we can do? How do we maintain the momentum without losing sight of our mission?" The girl pulled up a chair and sat down across from him. She knew what he was feeling, the weight of responsibility that seemed to grow heavier with every success. "You're overthinking this," she said softly. "We're doing what we set out to do, and the kids are proof of that. It's not about the numbers, it's about them." He looked at her, his gaze softening. "I know, but we need to make sure it's more than just a short-term solution. I want this to be something that outlasts us, something that continues long after we're gone." The girl nodded. her eyes filled with quiet determination. "It will be," she said. "You've already built something that's bigger than both of us. The kids, the community, the team, we've all made this happen. The foundation is strong. Now it's about continuing to build on that, brick by brick." He stared at her for a long moment, considering her words. She was right. The program wasn't just about the billionaire or even about him and the girl. It was about all of them, about the children they were helping, the families they were supporting, and the team that had come together to make it all possible. "But we need more resources," he said, his voice steady. "We need to bring in more partners, more people who can help us scale, people who believe in what we're doing." She smiled, the kind of smile that always reassured him. "We have the right partners," she said, "and we'll find more, just like we always have. We've already built something that matters, and people will want to be a part of it." The billionaire nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. He had always known that the success of the program wasn't about him. It was about the kids and the community they had created together. The team had come so far, and they were still just getting started. "You're right," he said, his voice filled with a new sense of purpose. "This is bigger than us. We can do this." He stood up, his posture more assured, the weight he had been carrying now feeling lighter. The girl stood up too, a small smile on her face as she joined him at the window, both of them looking out over the city, the skyline glowing in the distance. "We're changing lives," he said, his voice full of pride, "and we're just getting started." The girl smiled, her eyes filled with the same unwavering belief she had carried from the beginning. "We're just getting started," she agreed. As they stood there together, looking out at the city, the billionaire realized that the true measure of success wasn't in the size of the program, the funding, or the accolades they received. It was in the lives they were changing, in the opportunity they were giving to children who had never had a chance before. And that, he knew, was something worth fighting for. With the girl by his side, with the team behind them, there was no limit to what they could accomplish. They had started with a dream, and now, they were turning it into something real. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The program had reached a pivotal moment, and with it came a new set of challenges. The once small initiative had turned into a force for change, and as it grew, so did the expectations. The billionaire and the girl knew that their work was far from done, but the pressure of keeping up the momentum was beginning to weigh heavily on them. The media continued to spotlight the program, and as always, with public attention came scrutiny. The question of sustainability still loomed over them, casting a shadow on their progress. Despite the success and the stories of lives changed, there were those who still doubted whether they could maintain the same level of impact as they expanded. One rainy evening, as the city lights flickered outside his office window, the billionaire sat at his desk, reflecting on everything they had accomplished. He had always been driven by the desire to build something lasting, something that would endure. But now, as he looked at the state of the program, he couldn't shake the fear that perhaps they had reached a point where the next step would be their greatest challenge yet. As he sat lost in thought, the door to his office opened, and the girl stepped in. She had a quiet confidence about her, but there was something in her expression that told him she was feeling the weight of the situation as well. "You've been quiet today," she said softly, closing the door behind her. "Is everything all right?" He looked up at her, his expression weary. "I'm just thinking about the next steps. We've come so far, but now we're at a crossroads. We need to figure out how to make this sustainable. It's one thing to have a good run, but what happens when we need to scale up? What happens when the needs grow, and we don't have the resources to keep up?" The girl walked over and sat across from him, her gaze thoughtful. "You've already built something incredible. We've already proven that this works. The kids, the communities, everything is changing. But I get it. The idea of scaling is daunting. It feels like we're carrying a lot of responsibility, and it's hard to know if we can keep up with it all." She paused for a moment, and then added, "But what if that's not what matters? What if it's not about being perfect or doing everything at once? What if it's about staying true to what we've built, even if we have to take small steps?" The billionaire thought about her words for a moment. She was right. They had always focused on one step at a time, on building something solid, something that could grow organically. Perhaps the fear of not being able to maintain the program's success had clouded his judgment. "I've been so focused on growth," he said slowly, on reaching more kids, more communities. But what if it's not about the number of kids we help, but the depth of the impact we make on each life? The girl smiled, her eyes lighting up with understanding. Exactly, she said. If we can change one life at a time, if we can build those relationships and offer the right support, that's what really matters. It's not about scaling for the sake of scaling. It's about doing it in a way that honors what we started. The billionaire leaned back in his chair, taking in her words. He realized that in his drive for expansion, he had been losing sight of the true goal. It was never about reaching a certain number or becoming a household name. It was about making a difference, no matter the scale. You're right, he said, a sense of relief washing over him. Maybe we've been trying to run before we could walk. We need to focus on the quality of what we're offering, on ensuring that every child who comes through this program gets the full support they need to thrive. The girl nodded. And if we do that, the rest will follow. The kids will feel it, the communities will feel it, and that will naturally lead to more opportunities. We don't have to force it. The billionaire smiled, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Thank you, he said, his voice soft but sincere. I needed that. I needed to hear that it's okay to take things one step at a time. The girl's smile grew wider, her confidence radiating. We're in this together. We've already made such a huge difference, and we'll continue to make it, one child at a time. The impact will grow, and we'll be right here, making sure it's as powerful and meaningful as it was from the beginning. With that, the billionaire felt the weight that had been hanging over him begin to lift. He knew there would still be challenges ahead, there always were, but for the first time in weeks, he felt confident that they could navigate them, together. As he sat lost in thought, the door to his office opened, and the girl stepped in. She had a quiet confidence about her, but there was something in her expression that told him she was feeling the weight of the situation as well. You've been quiet today, she said softly, closing the door behind her. Is everything all right? He looked up at her, his expression weary. I'm just thinking about the next steps. We've come so far, but now we're at a crossroads. It had become something much larger, something that had touched countless lives and transformed entire communities. The billionaire, once a man driven solely by profit and success, had found a new purpose in life, one that was far more fulfilling than any deal or business venture he had ever closed. The girl, now a young woman, had become the heart and soul of the program, leading it with the same determination and compassion she had shown from the very beginning. Together, they had built something lasting, something real. As they sat in the same office where it all began, the weight of their journey was evident. The program had expanded to cities across the country, and children from all walks of life were receiving the support they needed to excel. The team had grown, too, with mentors, educators, and volunteers who were as passionate as they were about giving kids the tools to succeed. The billionaire looked at the girl, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. We've come a long way, he said, his voice soft but filled with emotion. I never imagined it would be like this. I didn't know we could make this kind of difference. The girl smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude and determination. I always knew, she said quietly. I always knew we could do it. You just had to believe. He nodded, his gaze lingering on her. You were right. You were always right. For a moment, they sat in silence, reflecting on the years that had passed, on the countless children they had helped, and on the many challenges they had overcome. But as they sat there, the billionaire realized that their work was far from finished. There would always be more to do, more children to help, more lives to change. But that was the beauty of it. They were making an impact, and with each step, they were creating a ripple effect that would last for generations. What's next? He asked, his voice steady and full of resolve. We keep going, the girl said, her smile unwavering. We keep helping more kids. We keep expanding. We make sure no one gets left behind. The billionaire leaned back in his chair, a sense of peace settling over him. He had spent so much of his life focused on building empires, on achieving the next big thing. But now, he knew that this work, this mission was the greatest achievement of his life, and it was only just beginning. They had started with one simple idea, and now it had become a movement that was changing lives, one child at a time. The billionaire reached across the desk, taking the girl's hand in his. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said. "You showed me what really matters." She squeezed his hand, her voice steady. "And you gave me the chance to make a difference. We did this together." They both stood, looking out the window at the city below. The skyline sparkled in the distance, a symbol of all they had achieved. But for the billionaire, it was more than just the city. It was a reminder of the lives they had touched, of the children who now had a future. And as he looked at the girl, he knew that they would continue to change the world, one step at a time. The future was uncertain, but they had already proven that they could face whatever came next. Together, they were unstoppable. In this inspiring story, we follow the journey of a young black girl and a billionaire, who together build a program that changes the lives of countless children. From humble beginnings, the two protagonists take on the challenges of creating a sustainable educational initiative aimed at helping underprivileged kids succeed against the odds. The program flourishes, and through their dedication and passion, they prove that one act of belief in a child can lead to immense change. This is one of the many powerful Black stories that show how resilience and determination can break down barriers, build bridges, and transform futures. As they face opposition, doubts, and the complexities of scaling up, the billionaire and the girl remain committed to their mission of providing opportunities for children who need it most. Through their journey, we see how Black stories can inspire hope and drive in even the most unlikely situations, proving that every child deserves a chance to thrive. This narrative not only highlights the importance of mentorship and support, but also the ripple effect of kindness and leadership. Each chapter of this journey reaffirms the strength found in unity, purpose, and belief in the potential of others. These Black stories serve as a reminder of the power of community, the value of helping those in need, and the incredible impact that can come from believing in a brighter future for everyone.